Hey everybody, it's Tracy at TierraCast, and we have a project demonstration for you today. We've recently launched a line of what we're calling stitch around hoops, and they're made specifically for seed beading around, and they come in two sizes, a 15 millimeter and an 18 millimeter, and it's got a cute little kind of seed bead like accent up at the top, which makes just a really nice finish for when you're putting a row of seed beads around the hoop, the outside of the hoop. So we're going to demonstrate that for you today. And what we need to do this project is some size 8 seed beads, beading needle, of course, some cutters, a thread burner is kind of optional, but good to have. And I've got some 10-pound wildfire thread to demonstrate with. I wouldn't necessarily use that heavy of a thread for this project, except that I wanted it to be really visible for you guys. But you could use this type of component with the beads around it is not going to take a lot of abuse. So you could use a much lighter thread. You could use 4-pound or your Nemos or your 1Gs in different colors. So, options for that are just really plentiful. So we need just about an 18-inch piece of thread. That's really all I need to just do one row around. If I was going to be adding additional rows, of course I'd want to have a longer piece of thread. So the first thing I do is thread my needle, and then I'm going to tie one end of the thread around the hoop with a double overhand knot or a square knot. And you do want to leave a little bit of a tail, about a 4-inch tail, so that you can weave in that end at the end of the process. So double overhand knot. And then slide that up to the loop. And then I'm going to take my needle and pick up 2 seed beads. And I'm going to slide those right down to the end. And I'm going to take the tail and tuck that up through that first bead. And then just pull those 2 threads away from each other, and that kind of tucks the knot up into that first bead. Just kind of gets it out of the way. So then I've got my second bead there, and I'm going to come behind the hoop and through, and then up through that second bead. And this is a brick stitch technique, so that adds your first 2 beads in the row. And then I'll pick up another one and come up through the hoop. You can either go down it through the hoop and around, or up through the hoop. It doesn't matter, it's your preference. And then I like to kind of trap that bead on the outside of the hoop as I pull the thread through, so that it doesn't come into the inside of the hoop. Kind of trap it there so it doesn't do that. And then pull your tension, and it tucks up next to the first 2 beads. And I'll do that one more time to demonstrate. And that's all there is to that brick stitch technique. So I would just continue that all the way around. I have a step out here ready for us that has everything except that last bead added. I have to untangle my thread so we can keep going. So that just needs, I think, one more bead. And that completes the first row, or that single row of beads. So now to weave in my, my thread and finish that off, I'm going to go down through that second bead and go behind the hoop. Again, that tail keeps, oh, that's not the tail, that's just the thread. I thought the tail was in my way again. Go down through the second bead, and then before I go back up, I'm going to thread my needle under the thread that's wrapping around the hoop and make a little half hitch knot. And then I'll thread that up through the bead. And then I'm going to come down through the first one again. Thread my needle under that thread that's coming around the hoop. Make a half hitch knot. And come back up through that bead. And that should secure that enough now where I can just take my thread burner or my cutters and trim off that thread. Now I'm just straightening up those beads next to each other. And now what I would do is thread my needle onto the tail and repeat that whole process on the second side. And now that that tail's we've woven in, I can trim off that piece of thread. And that is how simple it is to do a brick stitch row around one of our stitch around hoops. So then to finish the design, we just add an ear wire. So there is a lot of potential for working with these stitch around hoops. You can add additional rows of beads. You can use size 11 seed beads. You can bead inside the hoops. There's really a lot of potential for a lot of fun designs with these. So if you go to TierraCast.com and look at the inspiration section, you can find downloadable instructions for this technique on the Mod Brick Stitch Pearl Earrings inspiration page. So thanks for watching and hope you have fun with this technique.